Anyone, just to do it for all of us. Anyone who hasn't spoken a prayer in a while, anything, anyone from around the world, right? Who hasn't spoken a prayer, and we got all the time in the world, right? Yes, right, Paul and Enika, right? Now this is not Enika, this is Paul here. Paul saying, I pray for a transmission to feel new and something happens, right? Amen, amen. And we lift these prayers to the sky, right? Lift these prayers to the sky. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. And we turn to you, David, to read our code, to resonate our code for us. God, give us your whole heart. Take us inside, brother. Our code for this week.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. It's so good to be back here live with everyone. Thank you, Christina. So this code is beautiful. And I know, as a bisexual man who's always struggled to figure out, which side do I land on, which category, this code is a relief to me. And so I love to read it here. For this week's code: to awaken the new human and the new humanity, we require a gender liberation movement. We need to articulate and incarnate a new vision of evolutionary man and evolutionary woman. Evolutionary man and evolutionary woman understand the depth of the questions posed by the transgender movement, and they also understand the shallowness of the answers provided. Evolutionary man and woman are first unique self and evolutionary unique self. From that deep ground of identity, evolutionary man and woman transition not to transgender, but to unique gender. Unique gender is a primary identifying characteristic of evolutionary man and woman. Unique gender is not merely balance between what were once called the masculine and the feminine traits. Rather, unique gender understands that the traits once identified as masculine and feminine are actually qualities of the cosmos, what we refer to as lines and circles. One's unique gender is an expression of one's unique self. Unique gender is an emergent synergy from the unique integration of line and circle qualities in the human person. So it's a beautiful code, and I'm so happy to turn my word back to you, Dr. Mark.
Oh my God, David, thank you. What a beautiful resonance of the code, right? David, beautiful. Thank you. You're gorgeous, brother. You're totally gorgeous. So here we go. And I want to just say a couple of words, and I want to invite Barbara, right, to speak right into this, right, in this moment. But let's try and find this. This is unbelievably important. So what's the intuition? And I wrote about this a couple of pages in a book that Christina and I put out called A Return to Eros. It's actually a wonderful book. It's the radical experience of being fully alive. If anyone has a link, they can put it in, right? This book called A Return to Eros, and there's about 4 or 5 pages there on unique gender. And together with Christina, and particularly the leader of this project, Christina is kind of co-creating with me the entire vision of the phenomenology of Eros. And then there's a particular volume which Claire Molinaire, right, is stepping in, right, in a very deep way, which is called, right, Beyond He and She. And we're all working on that together. And we're going to do actually a little mini book on Beyond He and She, just a little based on our summer festival, where we spend a deep 8 days diving into this in 2015, right? And so hopefully we're going to see that in the next 3 or 4 months. It's unbelievably important. Beyond He and She. What's Beyond He and She? So let's stay with this. This is so radically important. We're going to hear from Barbara. And Barbara this week is going to tell us a little bit about her own story in this. So he and she, right? He and she, right? Everyone get that? Right? I'm either he or she. Well, is that true? So the transgender movement says something very beautiful and very correct that's been said in different ways through history, but it's being said in a very potent way now, perhaps the most potent way. I'm not just boy and I'm not just girl. Does everyone get that? Right? I'm not exhausted by my boyness. I'm not exhausted by my girlness, right? The fullness of who I am, right? I'm more whole than that. There's an identity to me that's underneath that identity. Does everyone get that? Right? There's an identity in me, and this, I'm going to be very precise in the Dharma. And this is something new. So I want to ask everyone, don't let it drop into old categories you have. This is something new. This is not balancing the masculine and feminine. This is something completely different. Okay? So stay with it, okay? Right? In other words, my deep understanding of self is that I'm not exhausted by the identities that I've been given. So stay with it. So let's say, I'm going to watch the time really carefully. Okay. So let's say that I am I don't know, let's say I'm a Frenchman. That's my identity. Let's say I'm Jewish. That's my identity. Let's say I'm Catholic. That's my identity. Let's say I'm Bulgarian. That's my identity. I'm Italian. I'm Sicilian, right? I'm from Montesquieu, right? That's my identity. Well, no, we're now realizing that doesn't exhaust my identity. So in the last 100 years, when people had an identity crisis, people broke out of their nationality. They broke out of their religion. I'm more than just Jewish. I'm more than just Christian. I'm more than just Islamic. That's the beginning of a world-centric consciousness, right? I'm more than French. I'm more than Sicilian, right? Does everyone get that? I'm more than Chinese. I'm more than Tibetan. Does everyone get that? Right? And we stepped beyond a kind of xenophobic nationalist patriotism as the sum total of our identity. That's important. Of course, we still need, right, relationship to our country and to our tribe, which is beautiful, but we stepped beyond that. So stay with it really closely, okay? So when we had an identity crisis, we broke out of that narrow identity. Now, stay with it. So what identity remains for us, right? Well, what do we have left, right? So we realize, okay, I'm not just Jewish, right? I'm not just Christian. I'm not just, right? I'm not just a particular nationality, right? I'm not just a particular job. I'm not just a doctor and a lawyer. So, well, what am I? What identity do I really still have? Oh, boy and girl, right? Someone's born, it's a boy. Someone's, right, it's a girl. That's almost the only identity that remains. Is everyone following this? Everyone following this? Is I'm boy and girl. But then we went deeper and we realized, right, and this is one of the great gifts of postmodernity. So, well, I'm not just boy and girl, right? So now today when we have an identity crisis, what do? We say, well, I'm not boy and girl. So imagine you're a 15-year-old and you're saying, oh my God, I'm having an identity crisis. So if you're a 15-year-old 40 years ago and you're a Jewish kid growing up in the Bronx, right, and you have an identity crisis, you say, wow, I'm not just Jewish, I'm American, right? You break out of your old identity. Right? If you're an American kid 30 years ago, right? 40 years ago, somewhere in the 60s, you say, I'm not just American, I'm cosmopolitan. But when our only identity left is boy, girl, so when we have an identity crisis, right, what happens? I want to break out of the only identity I have left. What identity is that? Is everyone tracking this here? Boy, girl, that's all I have left. So what's happening now around the world, and I want you to follow what's happening. It's very deep. So 15-year-old boys and girls are saying, oh my God, I'm having an identity crisis. But the only identity they have left is gender. So they go to break gender, right? And then they Google online and they see all sorts of stuff in the, all sorts of posts in the transgender movement, which are really important and asking all the right questions. They're challenging the limitation of my identity as only boy and only girl. Does everyone get that so far? Give me a yes if you're with me. Give me a yes in the chat box. Okay, give me a yes in the chat box. You're with me. You with me? It's really deep here. Right? But what the transgender movement does is, right, it asks the right questions and it senses there's a deeper identity beneath girl boy. But that deeper identity doesn't mean if I'm a girl, I should necessarily therefore change to a boy. Oh, right, I'm going to throw away my girl identity. Let me change to a boy. I'll throw away my boy identity. Let me change to a girl. I mean, occasionally, you might say that evolution made a mistake. And on a rare occasion, that might be a good thing to do. And I want to honor that. But that's not the pre-given move for 15-year-olds, right? And it's not about, right, changing to a different identity. I'm boy, now I'm going to be girl. You're going to wind up with all the problems of girl, right? Actually, it's deeper than that. I'm actually a unique gender. I'm a unique emergent, which is the unique combination of what we call my line and circle quality. Does everyone get that? So my line is the masculine. Right? My circle is the feminine. We call them line and circle because we don't want to fall into man-woman. These are qualities of cosmos that exist in all of us, right? The directional quality is one quality. The holding quality, the nurturing quality is a second quality. Directional quality is a line quality. Right? The line is directional, right? The holding quality is a circle quality. But those aren't man-woman qualities. We don't even want to call them masculine and feminine. They're qualities of cosmos. Think London and New York. Right, London and New York, right, line, what used to be called masculine. Think Bali and Hawaii, right, think feminine or circle. Now, those qualities live in you and me together. They live in us, as us, and through us. And they live in us uniquely, and there's a unique combination of those qualities, those lines and circles together. That's called wholeness. And who I am underneath boy, girl is not just my unique combination of boy, girl. It's my unique self. It's my evolutionary unique self. Who I am is I'm whole. I'm Homo Amor. I'm a unique configuration. I'm a person who incarnates uniquely divine purpose, right? And in that purpose, that whole purpose, right? That evolutionary unique self, Homo Amor. Homo Amor is beyond masculine and feminine. It's beyond he and she. So I've got to bring together, integrate, not to balance my masculine and feminine, but to integrate my line and circle into something new that never was, is, or will be ever before. Okay? Right, you with me? Does everyone feel that that's unique gender? It's not what David's talking about, right? Evoke, right? David's talking about something else, right? He's talking about balancing masculine and feminine. We're talking about something else. We're talking about unique gender, right? Homo Amor. Does everyone get that? Homo Amor. So let's bring Barbara in, right? Beloved Barbara. And Barbara's going to spend about, 10, 11 minutes. We're going to close with a song, right? Just talking about her experience, right? Of her line and circle story. You ready, Christina Amelon? Take us inside, right? And her story of line, circle, and this new moment of wholeness beyond that we're bringing in. Barbara.
I remember the first stand was to say to my father, I'm sorry, I will not do what you say. And it was an awesome thing because actually there was nothing he could do about it. He wasn't going to kill me. He wasn't going to hit me. And I got the feel because he was such a dominant masculine. And that was the touch of dealing with a very autocratic masculine to stand up to it. And so that was the beginning of the feminine, I would say the evolutionary man or the creator man inside me. And then came, I would say, when we dropped the atomic bomb, and I was surrounded by men who thought it was really great. The generals of the Second World War, the masculine, they won. We won. And that's when I realized, wait a minute, if we win more like that, we're all dead. So I have a real interesting history of becoming a co-creator, is I had to say, well, what is the meaning of this power to destroy and create like gods? If you want to talk about creator, we are creators, right? Once we got that bomb and now all the rest of it, the whole high-tech world is moving towards godlike power fast. And I could foresee it. So then the great question was, what is this meaning? What is the meaning of this masculineness that's good? Which also is a very great question, because a lot of people will totally criticize the masculine for this power and for the misuse of power and not try to see what's great about it. Because I intuitively began to have a Christ experience in the midst of this. And the Christ experience, basically the message was, be me. I'm here for all of you. Barbara, if you can love God above all else, your neighbor as yourself as me, a natural Christ, now that's neither masculine or feminine, combined with science and technology, you will all be changed. I would like demonstrations now, Barbara. Could you demonstrate what it's like to inherit the power of the Christ? To say, that's who I am, that's who you are. That was the entire message of Christ. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. If you've seen the Father, you've seen the Mother. I would call a natural Christ impulse was in there, combined, and at that time when my friendship with Jonas Salk, he took me down to these biology labs and they were saying, stamp out physical death. And while I was reading the Bible, where Jesus was doing all these miracles, including the resurrection from the dead. And I would ask, well, how do we do the resurrection from the dead? And it turns out we're doing it. it turns out if you really go to the growing edge of the science, in the biological realm, they know how to resurrect little DNA. And they're on their way to it. In fact, I had a friend who invented nanotechnology who called me up and he said, Barbara, he called me up right on the phone without any introduction. He said, Barbara, I think we can do resurrections.
Amen.
And I said, well, it's about time. He said, what do you mean it's about time? I said, well, the reason it's about time is that that's what Jesus said, you will do the works that I do and greater works. And you folks, you've taken the time to do it. But thank you. Eric Drexler was his name. He invented nanotechnology. So the next thing that happened, this is about, I am actually a total example of the incarnation of both of this. But here's the thing that I wonder if the other women have this. Along with having incarnated the impulse of creation and being a natural Christ and believing that we're going to have the powers that Christ had, is I wanted to please men.
Right.
And what I noticed was, and I talked this over with my sister Patricia Ellsberg, who's married to Daniel Ellsberg, who's a pretty strong man too. And I was at that time 25 years with Sidney Lanier. Is when I talked to Sidney, I had a kind of baby voice. Hi, Sidney, how are you? The same woman who was incarnating the Christ and going to resurrect from the dead was trying to please Sidney.
Now this church is getting real. This is what we're trying to talk about here, right? Hey, what are we doing in our masculine? Yes.
Give us anybody here. I'm trying to read these emails. Who feels very masculine, but somehow wants to please a man. But in a kind of babyish way. Not to please a man like I would try to please you, Mark. Of course I would try to please you.
Amen.
I love you. But it's very, very different than that babyish voice. And I talked it over with my sister, Patricia, who is also a very strong woman. And every time she talks to Dan Ellsberg, she has a babyish voice.
Yeah.
So that made me really realize that way down deep inside, the desire of the feminine, that I am very feminine in many ways, is to please the man. Mm. And then I thought, if we weren't able to please the man in the early part of human evolution, they probably left us and the babies died. So because the real difference between men and women is women have the babies. That's really different. It's not just a gender difference, it's a total physicality, psycho-spiritual difference. So when a woman is pregnant, she absolutely has to keep the man. Because the women who weren't able to keep the man during their pregnancy, because men don't really like it when the woman is all that pregnant. They've lost, their mate to some degree. And so during the pregnancy, the woman has learned to keep the man, and she didn't. They left her, and the babies died. So I think that there is something deep in the feminine that has to do with pregnancy and giving birth and needing the man not only to impregnate her, but to care for her during the birth and right after the birth, and has to care for that baby because she can't do it. And so we are all the descendants of women who could keep men by being totally pleasing.
This is getting real here.
Now what? But now the question is what to do now.
Yeah.
We're not having babies right now. We're not trying to keep the men we love by pleasing them because we're pregnant. So I want to just take it the next little step here. Is the way I really feel that I have become whole, if I may say that, is by saying a profound yes to purpose. The purpose inside any of us is neither masculine nor feminine. A genuine life purpose is, I would say, beyond masculine or feminine. I'm not talking about the type of purpose of keeping the man and pleasing him. I'm very strong on, I know what the difference is, but like the purpose of expressing the inner impulse of evolution to shift the world from devolution to evolution, that is not masculine or feminine. That's whole. And so I've begun to say that what really becomes the whole being, I believe, is an incarnation of the impulse of the divine as your purpose. Does that make sense to anybody? That when you say yes to that impulse, the impulse is not masculine or feminine. If you think of going through the core of the spiral, that's not man or woman. That's not masculine or feminine. And God really is neither masculine nor feminine. Spirit, God, source is not masculine or feminine. So when the woman incarnates the impulse and says 100% yes, no matter how it affects the men around her, they might not like it. And a lot of men don't really like it if a woman is that passionate about her purpose. But if she is, and she still has that yearning for the masculine love, which is really good. I'm glad I feel that way, is that I want to conclude here with the idea that we're becoming a new species, Homo Amor Universalis. And what I've been able to understand about being a member of Homo Amor Universalis is the word whole.
Yes.
I feel like my masculine and my feminine, my inner and my outer, my life purpose and other people's life purposes have become whole. And I feel the awesome reality that the species that we're calling Homo Amor Universalis has been able to do what humanity has not been able to do at all, which is the Homo sapiens does not bring together science and heart and love and beauty. Homo Amor Universalis has become whole as an entire species.
Yes.
And the awesome power of the wholeness of Homo Amor Universalis species-wide, that if you can, and if we can in this church, that both the women and the men experience themselves as Homo Amor Universalis, which is whole. It's even more than integrated. It's wholeness. And when I say this and speak this, I actually feel that I am a new being. That the wholeness is new. Because how does reality create newness? It creates new wholes, like single cell to multi-cell to animal to human. So I'm putting up after human whole being. Homo Amor Universalis is more than a good Homo sapiens sapiens. And as a whole woman, integrating masculine and feminine and integrating the divine expression of creativity or God as purpose, God's purpose incarnate as each one of us. Oh my God, what is this type? I mean, I think, Mark, we have to go, yes, the evolution of gender, but the evolution of gender ultimately is the evolution of the person into wholeness.
So let's track this, friends, right? So actually, unique gender means my wholeness. Right, here's the one sentence. We're going to close church. We're 2 minutes over time. But first, we're just going to ask everyone, Barbara, this is your moment to ask for contribution. So contribution, right? The way that church goes every week, the way that we keep this going, we want to up-level technology. Our friend, I'm not allowed to mention his name because he promised that I wouldn't, but our friend's going to help us, our good friend from church, to create an entire new web presence, right, which we're going to do in the fall. But in the meantime, to actually keep this going every week and to up-level technology and to invite new people, we do contribution. So we're asking everyone. And Barbara would always talk about contribution. Barbara, you did this so much better than me. But Barbara would always say, we're going to resource church, right? And resource means I got to go deep into my source and deep into my generosity. right? And deep into my $12 a week, right? So if I get ecstatic, and it's the weakness of the New Age movement, right? And Terry, I know we shouldn't pick out any movements, right? But in this case, with your permission, right? The old churches, they know this notion of commitment. The fundamentalist church knows, wow, I give to church, right? But in the New Age world, we kind of show up, we get excited. But when it comes to actually give something of ourselves, right? And so that's problematic. So in the human potential world, right, that world of kind of alternative spirituality, we have to actually learn something from fundamentalism, which is both evangelism, right, which means the good news, to actually be excited about this news story, and to actually tell a news story, and to actually give, to be generous. And that means everything. Right? No one makes money in Evolutionary Church, not a penny. Right? So we're really inviting everyone to step up, and if we get 200 people doing, X amount, we're asking everyone to do $50 a month. Every penny is going to go into outreach, right, to build this so it becomes a wave, a cascading wave of evolutionary love around the world. And there's not 10,000, but there's actually 1 million people, and 2 million and 10 million signed up to Evolutionary Church as a network of evolutionary churches around the world that become a political force of evolutionary love. Right? Can you feel that rising? I can feel it rising with you. So thank you. Thank you, everyone. Last sentence. I know we're 3 minutes overtime. I'm sure a whole bunch of people had to go. So thank you. We apologize for going overtime today. Here's the last sentence, right? The notion of unique gender, of beyond boy and girl, is there's a wholeness that lives underneath gender. Underneath gender, we're whole. We're Homo Amor, right? We find that wholeness, we find that unique gift by finding the precise integration of our line and circle qualities, which come together to create the heros gamos, right? To create the wholeness that is ever and always and already there, right? Underneath gender is not boy becomes girl, girl becomes boy. It's actually a line circle. It's a beyond he and she, and beyond he and she is Homo Amor. You get that? Oh my God, right? Everyone have a gorgeous week. Have a gorgeous, stunning, beautiful week beyond imagination. Beyond imagination. How could anyone ever tell you that you are anything less than beautiful? How can anyone ever tell you that you're less than whole? All right, amen. Take us inside Christina Amlin. Have a gorgeous week, everyone. Let's make this revolution happen. A revolution of evolutionary love. Amen.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
How could anyone ever tell you across the world?
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
David, thank you.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.